Hi, my name is Mabin. I'm the author of The Drover, The Driver and the two new grower books, The Heartbeat of Australia and The Roots of Australia. You've received this video because you've purchased copies of my books, so thank you so much for supporting what has been an epic project. In this video, you're going to see a bit of what it takes to produce books of this scale, so I hope you enjoy. With a project as big as the one I've just finished, it was important to build a framework to guide me on the journey. But that framework needed to be fairly malleable. I had a list of the types of images that I wanted, but with this vast land that we nurture, you never know what you're going to come across. So I found if I set parameters, then I was at risk of missing opportunities. Although I had been asked to make a book that was 250 to 300 pages, once I got into the project and realised just how big it was, I thought if I'm going to do this right, I needed to blow out my page count. Hence, 2 books were produced. Every day, I would visit 2 to 3 farms that I've never been to before, and I'd never met the owners either. So, short of knowing what type of operation they ran, I had no idea what to expect. But one of my main focuses was to make sure that every farm was represented differently. It is important not to go in with a preconceived idea and to come up with my own concepts once I've met the people and learnt a little bit about their property and their farming practices and the type of people that they are. One of the hardest parts was for Heather, who booked everything in for me. She would ring the farmers and explain what I was doing to get their buy-in to the project. Then they would say, well, sure, what does she want to get photos of? To which Heather would respond, well, I don't know. She'll work that out when she gets there. So from the farmer's perspective, a photographer, or the media, as I was so often labelled, wants to come and visit, take up their time, but doesn't know what they want to get a photo of. Whatever Heather said to them, she did a brilliant job to get their buy-in. Sometimes I would meet people who were sceptical of my ability to take a photo, or those who were wary that I was media or I was going to misrepresent them. Or some who were flat out and didn't have time to give me the grand tour of the property. Others were happy to put me on a horse or fly me to different locations in planes and helicopters. So I had to gain the trust of them in a short time to capture something sensational to showcase 1 or 2 aspects of their business and livelihood. Every place I visited, I was dealing with new people with different personalities and beliefs and perceptions of what I was doing. And when I was on a very tight time schedule, the idea of a stranger blowing in and out to take photos of people who often hate to be photographed or recognised for their efforts was pretty daunting to them. Sometimes I'd plant seeds for images that would take a fair amount of work to create. I'd throw the ideas around, and if the farmers showed interest or asked more questions, I'd explain a bit more about what was involved in setting it up. Some things like poppy blooms or grain harvest have very short windows of opportunity, so they dictated some of my travel movements, and all other aspects of farming in those areas got built around the key times that I had to meet due to time constraints. On my travels, I meet 2 types of kids. Those who are so excited to have a visitor that they were crazy when I arrived and would have to have a cup of coffee and a chat to get them to settle down. And then there were those that were dead set adamant that I was never going to get a photo of them. But I worked out a few ways to talk their talk and walk their walk. Often, I'd ask the shy ones, do you have book week at school? Most would respond, yes. And I'd say, well, what do you dress up as? What did you go as last year for book week? And they'd go on to tell me all of the costumes that they'd worn. So then I'd say to them, well, I know what you can dress up as this year when you go to book week. I said, well, if you let me take your photo, you can go dressed up as yourself. If I can take a photo of you, I'm going to put you in a book. And when you turn up at book week dressed in the clothes that you're wearing today, all your friends are going to think you've forgotten book week. Then you can show them the picture of you in a book. Next minute, we're off taking photos and they were no longer shy. And then there is my energy. You know, on more than one occasion, people have said to me that they've never met someone who oozes so much passion for what they do. After spending time in a coma and realising how precious life is, I don't take a single day for granted. Add 8 hours sleep to the mix and I struggle to contain my energy and drive for life. But it is infectious. People often draw off my energy and find themselves being uplifted. More often than you may think, I visited properties where the situation was pretty glum. It hadn't rained in months, they were feeding stock daily, tractors were sitting in sheds and no crops were planted because the risk was too big to invest the money to plant. And people would go to bed every day wondering where their next paycheck was coming from and how they would keep the banks off their backs. I did my best to have a positive impact on their view on life at that point in time by telling stories of my travels, what I'd seen, where I'd been, who I'd met, the little challenges I faced along the way. And let's face it, my challenges were very little compared to theirs. But I did my best to give them hope. It can be tough bringing up a young family so far from town. And I came across many people in this situation. These women should be commended for their efforts. Often they find themselves getting the kids up, entertaining them all day, doing the household chores, cooking meals, doing the accounts, keeping the garden and the yard tidy, feeding animals, ordering farm supplies and putting the kids to bed without even seeing their husbands for the day. It can often feel like you're alone on the journey, but both parties are critically important to the success of the business. And sometimes this means soldiering on through the isolation of living in remote areas and working long days to get closer to the end goals. I often have those same feelings of isolation. One may look at my world and think I have the life because every day I'm meeting new people and visiting new properties and seeing amazing parts of Australia. But I'm always on point. No matter what is going on in my world, when I front up, I have to be that happy, bubbly, energetic person that I am. And for the most part, this is true and that's always me and it comes pretty naturally. Not a lot gets me down. But when you're tired and you've been on the road for months and you don't have someone close to you to bounce ideas off in the tough times, or just tell someone about my great day, it can feel pretty lonely. People who don't walk your walk often have no idea about the price you pay to have the lifestyle or the success. They only see the glory. Thanks to all those people who have been the ears I've entered to. I couldn't have done this without you. On any given day, I could visit a beef operation, a piggery, a produce farm and a prawn farm. Each time you have to change the type of conversation you're having to fill in another piece of the puzzle for the chapter they belong in. I have to admit that when I had to start working on the pig and poultry industry, I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to do it justice. That it was going to be hard to photograph a controversial industry. How wrong I was. The project is all about the importance of the ag industry, so I had to look for good things to capture and talk about. And this was super easy once I got my foot in the door, which in its own right was the biggest challenge of all. Due to the poor media coverage they get, they're very sceptical about anyone with a camera, and rightfully so. But with a little perseverance, I managed to build their trust and got access into all types of pig and poultry operations all over the country. As I got further and further through the project, it seemed to get harder and harder to come up with creative ways to take photos of sheep and cattle and most of our mainstream industries. But now and again, I'd surprise myself. Sometimes I would have a vision in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and I'd write it down and fall back to sleep with a smile on my face. Because when I saw something in my mind, I knew at some point on the journey, I would get the opportunity to create that exact image. One day I had to take an interpreter with me to a produce farm as the owners and the staff didn't speak a word of English. So I found myself drinking cups of Chinese tea and playing Chinese whispers to get buy-in from the owners to be part of the project. Getting my commercial UAV pilot's license added another dimension to my toolkit, and it was a fairly novel thing on farm also. But I had to work hard to get people's confidence at first. Often I would put the little drone up to scout out a location before putting up the big drone to get the official photos. I would make a little video for each farm with the small drone and literally only put up the big drone for photos that were for the books. But while doing this, I would let the farmers fly the small drone. Height is your friend, I'd say. Just watch out for where I am flying and have fun. It was a bit of a novelty for them. I wonder how many farmers went out and bought drones after that. Kids never ceased to amaze me as they knew all about them and could fly better than I could. People would often ask me how long it took me to perfect it. I'd say, well, I haven't yet, but I get better every day. The tricky thing is that the settings are very different from film to photograph. and you can't put a film in a book. Constantly, I would be having arguments with myself, saying that I should be filming this, or I should be taking a photo of this. But the time it takes to change the settings can often mean that you miss a shot, as 9 times out of 10, I was always dealing with a moving subject. People would often ask me how far my drone went, like it was a measure of how good it was or something. My drone could go about 5 kilometres, but when your days are dictated by battery life and access to PowerPoints, you don't go flying down the back paddock and back again to prove a point. If I had 3 shoots on for a day, I would often have to assign 1 or 2 batteries per property to make sure that I didn't run out and that everyone got the opportunity to have some aerial shots. You can't just charge batteries as soon as they're flat though. They need to cool down first before they would charge. Some days I even had to fly the drone from inside a vehicle with the aircon going because my iPad kept overheating. Or there would be days where it was freezing cold in locations and the drone just wouldn't fly as the batteries were too cold. So I'd have batteries stacked up on the dash of the vehicle with the heater on full blast to try and warm them up. On more than one occasion, I was red-faced and looking for the first opportunity to make a quick exit, and I felt that no matter how much I apologised for upsetting the cows, I didn't feel like my words were enough. But very quickly, I learnt that dairy cows don't like drones. In fact, they don't even like the click of the camera, and on more times than I wish to remember, I upset the milking shed. But thankfully, I had a really understanding group of farmers and they didn't get too worried about it. People often wanted me to come to their place for key events such as shearing, mustering or harvest. But if I turned up to everyone's place for those events, I would have had a book full of mustering, shearing and harvesting pictures. But every aspect of the agriculture year, no matter what is going on, from fencing to irrigation to checking waters and moving stock, it's all important. People would often ask what I focus on shooting when I turn up to a property. It's very hard to go in with a single focus to get landscapes or scenic shots or the likes. If the days were overcast or gloomy, I'd focus more on close-ups. If I planned my days around the weather, we would have probably spent the next 5 years trying to get this project done. It was always frustrating to hear from people that the sunrise and sunsets were amazing yesterday. With time absolutely paramount, I didn't have time to sit around and wait for the epic sunrises and sunsets. I had to take opportunities if they came up or work out another plan if it was a fizzer. When it was a fizzer, it was hard not to let your whole day be disappointed by the fact that you didn't get a good sunrise shot. Some days I would do 1,000 kilometres along with 2 or 3 shoots. With the commitment to complete the project in 365 days and over 300 aspects to the agriculture industry to cover, I had to stick to a strict but fully malleable schedule. We tried to set some rules to follow for making appointments and trying to cover all aspects when we were in a region. But something would come up and the rules would be thrown out the window. I never really was one for rules anyway. But we had to have a bit of a process to follow or it would have ended up all over the show. In the first 69 days, I visited 32 properties. A simple calculation said, Alice, you need to pull your finger out. This is no walk in the park. But the scale of some of the properties that I visited, the activities going on any one given day, and the distances between properties meant that sometimes the kilometres were not on my side. I got into a bit of a rhythm where I would turn up at a property in the afternoon, I'd get to know them, have a look around. Sometimes this would be done by car, other times by horse or plane or helicopter. And if there was a sunset opportunity, I would find a location or convince someone to be my subject. Payment by means of cartons of beer was usually enough to twist people's rubber arms, and knowing that they'd only be a silhouette made them comfortable without being in front of the camera. I would then stay with the family. A lovely meal would be shared while I became the entertainment, telling stories and showing videos of where I'd been. Before you knew it, it would be midnight and I'd be looking for a pillow as I knew I wanted to be up for sunrise if the sky was going to put it on for me. And so many times it didn't. And to rub it in more, I'd get a message a few days later from the property saying, oh, you should have been here this morning or this evening. The sunrise or sunset was epic. I would capture some action or some events the next morning and then head off. Shooting in the middle of the day is not much fun. The light is harsh and there's lots of shadows, so I found this the best time to travel. Also, there's less roos at this time of the day. But then this flow would be completely kicked in the butt by something that had to be shot midday overhead with the drone to ensure that there were no shadows. On these days, I would find myself driving anywhere from 500 to 1,000 kilometres through the night to get to the next location in time for a sunrise, or at least the morning glow. How I got through without hitting any roos beats me. I did have to laugh sometimes as farmers would ask me what time I wanted to start, and it turns out that my idea of first thing was often earlier than their idea of first thing. I would shoot solidly for 8 weeks straight without stopping. By the end of the 8th week, I was exhausted and I didn't want to see anyone. So I would schedule 2 to 3 days in the office. I would pull up somewhere on my travels, find a place that I felt relaxed and comfortable, and I would edit for 2 or 3 days. These days would still start at 4 AM and finish at midnight. But I'd get through all of the editing and a huge weight would be lifted off my shoulders. I would then look at the folders of edited images and make selections for the book. Sometimes though, I was so sick of looking at images and I was so tired, I hated everything I'd taken and I felt like I'd just wasted 8 weeks. But I'd switch off and not look at the images for a week or so. I'd get back into shooting and take a look at them if I got an early finish one night. With a fresh set of eyes, I was often pleasantly surprised at some of the shots I didn't even realise I'd taken. And I'd make selections for Penny, my designer, and send them off to her. Penny is an incredible woman. I was introduced to her through an old colleague when I worked for Pfizer. Penny worked for me for almost 3 years before I met her face to face. She works a day job and does design work for me at night. Our schedules worked really well as she would send me proofs at 3 AM and then go to bed. I'd be up at 4 or 5, I'd check her work, provide feedback and start my day. The best part about Penny is she's not from an agricultural background. So she saw things differently to all of us and would often put images or pull images into play that I had discounted. Like me being self-taught in photography, she was self-taught in design. So we're not limited by education and what we've been taught to do. We run a set of rules that says, if I can imagine it, we can find a way to make it happen. The sky is the limit. We found a great way to work together that literally on the last days of the photo shoots, Penny was doing the final touches to the books also. But then you have this thing called proofreading and editing. And don't worry, I crucify myself over this because I'm such a perfectionist. But I too am human. I've done the best I can, but I apologise now if you do find a mistake, and I welcome the feedback. I had to bite my tongue when the professional business I engaged to do the proofreading were not consistent in their approach to the job. There are so many things to consider when you engage someone to do this sort of work. Someone's understanding of the industry. If they're editing a sentence structure and they decide to change it, it can change the whole meaning of the sentence. Then you've got grammar consistency, which English literacy rules you're going to follow. Once the books were produced and ready to go to print, people started asking what I'm going to do now that it's all over. Over, I'd say. It's only just beginning. I'm a self-published author. This means that I need to pay for printing, marketing, distribution, and drive the exposure of the books myself. In order to keep the price low, I've had to print significant amounts of stock. 82 tonnes in total, to be exact. That's 4 40-foot shipping containers. It's enough to make one lose a little sleep. Thankfully, I've developed a wonderful working relationship with the printers I use in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, it's too expensive to print here in Australia. The cost of printing is more than what I sell the books for, so offshore printing is the only choice. But when you hit print and have a bill the size of a moderate house mortgage to pay in 90 days' time, one often thinks I am mad to keep doing this to myself. So there are no holidays as I turn into marketing and sales mode in order to pay my printing bills on time. But I don't really need a holiday because I love what I do. More than anything, I love the impact the books have on people who read them. Over the years, I've developed a wonderful chain of resellers who believe in me and my products. But this hasn't come easily. For every 10 shops I'd go into, I might be lucky to get 2 to stock my books. Often I'd be treated like a rep when I went in there. Sometimes they wouldn't even see me if I didn't have an appointment made. But it was always hard to make appointments as I never knew where I was going to be from day to day or how long I was going to take at the previous appointment. So I'd just cold call. So when you know you have something that people will love and you've put your whole heart and soul into producing it, it is the hardest thing to hear someone say that they don't want to stock your product. This is common, and I've learned to accept it. For shops that are not used to selling books or products of a higher price, the risk is too big for them in their eyes, and they choose not to support it. But I don't take this personally. That's their business decision. Sometimes when people work out that you are the author, they put you on a pedestal, which I find even more uncomfortable. I've developed some wonderful friends in the shop industry, and I've gained a better understanding of their positions, the overheads that they have, etc. And often the margins they need to have in order to make money and cover their overheads is more than I can give away to shops, as there is very little margin in my products also. I choose to keep the price as low as I can so that every person in Australia can afford to have and cherish my books. Granted, we all need to make a living, and I've covered my costs and had the most incredible journey on the way. The last 5 years have been a wonderful experience, but it's not a sustainable future. So I'm hanging up my cameras and I'm going to find a new career path. I have the greatest memories and products to remember them by. I look at my books as my business cards, and I'm looking forward to whatever I pursue in the future. Every page in my books serve as a memory of people's dedication to a cause bigger than themselves. Some pages display the heartbeat of passion, the eye of vision, the drive of determination, and the roots of resilience. Sometimes, the longest, most challenging roads can lead to unexpected, enthralling destinations and people, and the happiness that this brings is immeasurable. No matter the situation, you must keep the wheels turning in order to chase stories worth telling when you're old. Edit your life frequently, ruthlessly. After all, your story is your masterpiece. Once again, thank you so much for purchasing my books, and I really hope you've enjoyed gaining an insight into what it takes to produce books of this scale. Please feel free to share this video with your friends and family, and I really hope that you enjoy the books just as much as I've enjoyed putting them together.